It's another beautiful Sunday. Hi, Bruce Clark, Coldwell Banker. So, if this is your first time on the channel, do us a favor. Hit the subscribe button, click the bell for notifications so we can notify you next time we upload a new video on living, working, playing, investing in Southern California real estate. Hi, my name is Bruce Clark. I'm a real estate agent, Coldwell Banker. I've been doing it more than 17 years, going on 18 years soon. So we represent buyers, sellers, we represent investors in residential, commercial real estate, all kinds of different things. So our live videos, a little different than our other videos, and we apologize for not having more videos on our regular channel. We've been swamped. Thank you for everyone reaching out to us, and so we're it's a balancing act. You make videos, people call you, you meet with them. It's a blessing, and so we're excited to work with everybody. But excuse me, our Sunday videos, I really like. I want to touch on things that I really enjoy keeping up on relative to the economy, not just real estate, but also economics and things like that. So that's what we're doing. So tonight, the title is Fed, Economy, and Real Estate. So let's first talk about the Fed. So Federal Reserve right now, the Fed is driving the economy. The interest rates are having a huge effect. We're seeing banks. Let's talk about banks for a second. Republic National Bank is now under receivership. The FDIC took them over. That's bank number 3. And we have a really cool chart, and I'm going to post that. We have a really cool chart that shows the uninsured deposits, and you'd be amazed at who's at the top and then also who's at the bottom. I was surprised. I thought some of the banks that would be in trouble based on this chart aren't, and vice versa. But towards the very top was Silicon Valley Bank. They had a lot of uninsured deposits. That meant people have more than 250,000, and there's a lot of those. So when you have those, you don't have the FDIC involved, and so when you have a run on the bank, as they did at Republic National and Signature Bank and Silicon Valley Bank, then theoretically you don't have insurance on that additional anything over $250,000. However, the Treasury and the Fed came out and said, who cares? We're just going to insure everything. So, wow, the FDIC is now they're talking about tacking on a little fee to all other banks. So there's no free lunch here. There's no mystery. But in the past, we had systemically important banks that basically too big to fail. And then we had non-systemically important banks and financial institutions. So Citibank, Chase, Wells, systemically important. They're not going to let them fail. Aetna, Pacific Life, certainly, all of those are systemically important financial institutions, so they're not going to let them go under. You have Schwab, and of course you have all of those. You had Fidelity, and of course Vanguard. Sorry, I was thinking Bogle Wine. He started Vanguard also. So the Fed, though, they raise rates so quickly, and one of the things that we're seeing is the effect on the banking industry. The banks are, and again, and my apologies for the hair. I was out showing properties. So the banks and the reserves and the uninsured deposits, we're seeing a lot of activity. They're trying to shore up the balance sheets, things like that. So what's happening, and the reason I talk about that is because as the Fed has raised the rate, it's devastating to commercial real estate lenders and commercial real estate owners. We're seeing, and I talked about this, BlackRock and Blackstone and Boston Properties and certainly Brookfield. We're seeing a lot of people having a lot of problems. In San Francisco, over 30% of office space is vacant right now. That's unsustainable. You just can't. You can't own a building and have 30% of it be vacant. In fact, Republic National owns a building. They used to own a building up in San Francisco that was on the market. They were putting on the market for $250 million. There were no buyers. They're talking about that property changing hands for $50 million. That's a 22-story building. Heck, I'd like to. Love to put 50 million and buy that. However, here's a caveat here. It's going to take 50 million. It's deferred maintenance, so things they didn't take care of over time. Deferred maintenance of 50 million, so that 50 becomes 100. They're 75% vacant because the bank, since they no longer can afford to lease the property, the biggest tenant's going to be gone. So you're at 100. Some people have talked about, well, hey, why doesn't someone buy that bank or buy the building and convert it? I have a client who's done this, and we talked about this just the other day. The amount of time and money it would take to convert a 22-story building, 15, 20, 30, 60-story building into condos, it's enormous money. You have to go through, of course, you have the permit process. The engineering is huge. The structural engineering, you've got a totally different. You've got to add more bathrooms. I mean, it's a huge, as my Yiddish friends would say, it's a huge Megillah. It's a lot of work, and there's no certain payoff. But not only that, it's not just the money, it's the time. And my client was saying, and again, he's been involved in this, about skyscrapers and literally he's invested all around the world. And so I have benefit of talking to some world-class investors. And so he was saying it's not just the money, but it's the time. It's going to take longer than one thinks, and it's going to cost more than one thinks. So that $50 million building, you put 50 in just to bring it up to reasonable standards, you're into it for 100. Now you've got to put how much more? 200, 300. Now all of a sudden you're overbuilt in a sense. And in an area in San Francisco where 30% of the commercial space is vacant, it just doesn't look tenable. Here's a really cool stat that I think this is a leading indicator. The cell phone traffic in San Francisco, downtown San Francisco, is down 69% from just 2019. So what that means is people just aren't going to the office, and we're seeing it played out in real time in the commercial space. And my sense is 30% is probably low. It's probably more in the 40 to 50%. I think they're sandbagging in a sense. My personal opinion, based on what I'm seeing. San Francisco, of course, you have the massive crime. Now, there's no mystery. We want to be safe when we go to work, and we want to come home to family and friends. So how does all of this play? So the banks are getting hit. The biggest lenders on commercial real estate and land are typically your local banks and your regional banks, who were hit hard. The regionals, non-systemically important banks, Signature Bank and Silicon Valley Bank, which was important to Silicon Valley far more than Silicon Valley was to, I think, the national. They didn't have branches all over. So Semi Republic National. So they're getting hit. The big guys are still, they're still doing well. They're not going to let Citi or Chase or any of those go under. So that's driving. So every time the Fed increases rates, defaults on commercial real estate are going to go up. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. Now, there's ways they can hedge themselves. They can buy interest rate cap. I mean, there's all kinds of neat things on commercial that they do that we don't do on the residential side. And I frankly, I love both. Residential is more emotional. You like a home, you like the community, you like the architecture. There's a lot of emotion involved. It could be the colors, it could be the style, it could be the location. That's emotion. Commercial real estate's very, it's necessity driven, need driven, but necessity. We need 18,000 square feet. We need contiguous space. We need this, and this, and this. And so there's virtually no emotion involved in it. It's far more driven by the numbers and by necessity. How much per square foot? What about the CAM charges? I mean, there's all kinds of neat things. And it's neat. And again, I really think this helps me be a better real estate agent in everything I do. Same thing with the raw land. As we're out looking at raw land, I interface with engineers, I've interfaced with structural engineers. geological engineers. We interface with, of course, builders, contractors, everybody, landscape architects, designers, things like that. I think that really helps. It helps me help everybody, whether it's a purchase or a sale or a fixed or on the commercial side. So the Fed expected they're going to raise rates by another 25 basis points or 0.25%. That's going to, I don't have an exact number, but my sense is we'll see an extra few percent of companies that have problems. I do know there was a real estate investment trust, a REIT, that was going to go public that can't because, and they didn't, because of the interest rate increase by the Fed funds rate by the Fed. We're still seeing an inverted yield curve. So short-term rates are lower than long-term rates, and historically that's not been the case. Typically, it portends or it kind of forecasts for a recession, and we're not seeing a recession yet. I also believe that what we're seeing on the when they talk about inflation, it's just there's no way it's just 5%. I mean, there's no way possible. We're paying $5.15, $5.25 a gallon for gas out here in Southern California. Eggs are through the roof. There's nothing that's less expensive. There's nothing that's only expensive by another 5%. We're 10, 15, 20%. So what they've done, liars figure and figures lie. They've removed fuel, they've removed food, and so I think they're fudging numbers. But we're also seeing a big effect in the retail space. Bed Bath & Beyond, they're gone. How does that play into the commercial space? All those stores are now going to come back they're going to come to the market. So all of that space, we're talking about millions and millions of square feet of office, of commercial space, that's going to be out there. Repurposing, I'm sure they'll repurpose some, but for the most part, those stores were pretty large, and we're not seeing the Nordstrom, certainly Sears we know, and JCPenney, Kohl's. I'm surprised they haven't been bought by Amazon, because Amazon, you can take stuff back. You buy it. If you buy it on Amazon and it doesn't work out for you, you can go there. They also have lockers that you can pick up a package at. So I'm surprised. Speaking of Amazon, they've talked about buying AMC theaters. Now that would be interesting. I'm not certain regulators would let them. I do know that the foray into food hasn't worked out. Grocery stores, grocery stores, it hasn't worked out. They've really not picked up much in the way of space market share. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. So Fed, economy, real estate. We talked about commercial, residential in Southern California, no change. We're out in an open house today, showed a client a home here in Irvine, and they were stacked. Homes in the market for around 1.3, they're probably getting 1.45 million for it, an all-time high. We saw people, it's a crazy number. So in the community that this home is in, El Camino Real, so in California, you have areas. And so an area, for example, could be El Camino Real, could be North Park, it could be Laguna Altura, it could be Quail Hill, Orchard Hills. These are areas. Inside of an area goes our tracks. So in North Park, you have the Huntingtons, you have the Cambrias, you have some Sonoma. I mean, you got all kinds of things, Mendocinos. So but in El Camino Real community, they're older homes. They're in probably early 70s to late 70s. There are only 3 homes available, and the community is over 3,000, and that's consistent with what we're seeing everywhere. We've been going out in San Diego. We've gone to Los Angeles County. We're in Riverside County again. Multiple offers. One of the homes that our clients had a home on had 20 offers. We were right there. They had a cap number. I firmly believe if we'd had a little more room, we would have got the home. One of the things that we do is we build a relationship with the other agents. Our goal is when we represent a seller is to sell the home. Our goal isn't to maximize our our revenue. We don't like representing the buyer and seller. There have been times we have. When it's beneficial, when it's truly beneficial, but we give everybody a fair shake. We make it a level playing field. So when I send out seller multiple counter offer, a little secret here. When you have an offer in a property as listing agent, if you have one offer, you can send what's called buyer counter offer, BCO. So the BCO goes out. If there's more than one buyer, legally, you cannot send a seller multiple counter unless there's at least two plus buyers. So, and you can have different terms and conditions. A lot of people think, hey, I got this seller multiple counter, I'm going to accept it. It's my home. That's not the case. We sent 6 of them out in the property recently. We got 4 of them back. But here's the trick. One of the buyers, the agent, advised them to send it back and add a little. So not only did they sign the seller multiple counter offer, but they sent it back and said, hey, we're willing to pay a little more. Everyone else signed the seller multiple counter offer. The value, as I told my seller, the value to us was that buyer was more motivated, and the agent knew, they were experienced, and they knew what it would take. They were showing that they were more invested in the process, if you will. That's what I do. I think it's important when you deal with seller multiple counter offers. But coming back, so we want to make certain that we have a great relationship with the agent, that we know the property, we know the comps, we know the market, what's on the market, what's pending, what's sold, the condition. Though we're not appraisers, we have a real good take on the market, and a real good idea of what property is going to sell for. But when you get a seller multiple counter offer through a buyer, take a look at it. Naturally, if all the terms and conditions are not acceptable, it's a moot point. As far as immediate acceptance, you can counter. You always have the right to counter. Keep in mind that simply because acceptance of a seller multiple counter offer does not mean that that's your home. The seller then needs to counter sign. So we received 4 back, and then I put in front of my seller, I said, here's the 4. The one who I felt was most motivated and frankly had the best representation was one who decided, hey, I'm going to come back and add a little. And that's what I told my buyer. I said, that's the one we want to go with. We built a relationship with the agent, had a great conversation. They stayed in touch with us. They were asking the right questions. We were reaching out to all of them. At the end of the day, it really matters who you go into escrow with as both a buyer and seller. I tell people it doesn't get any easier when you're looking at property, and it's like dating. You're up in the ether. Everybody's happy. There's roses being thrown. And bubbly being. Champagne's been popped. Everybody's happy. If it's not going well before you open escrow, it's not going to get any better, because that's where there's a lot of pressure. There's a lot of time pressure. There's a lot of we have financial pressures. You're looking at a crazy amount of documents. You're looking at, of course, purchase agreement disclosures. You could be next easily 150 pages. Of course, you've got homeowner association documents. That could be 100, 300, 400. You've got title. You've got the escrow instructions. I mean, there's a lot of things. You've got a termite inspection report to look over. You've got a homeowner inspection, the home inspection report to look over. That's what we do. That's what we do for our buyers, and for the sellers too, because the HOA documents are going to go to the buyer, and they're paid for by the seller. We don't have to look those over, because that's the job of the buyer to discover. So in real estate, you have disclosure, which is the seller. The seller discloses to the buyer everything they know about the property or should know. For example, whether was there a leak in the ceiling? If there is, if there was, what was the genesis of it, and what was the outcome? What was the resolution? And all that has to be documented. Someone died in the property in the past 3 years, has to be documented. Did they, all of those things? Were some things done without permits? Were changes made? Was it painted, in the past 12 months? Things like that. So that's disclosure. The buyer's job is to discover, which is why the buyer has the home inspection. So they pay for the home inspection report. They typically, they'll be with the home inspector. They'll come out. They'll talk to them. The home inspector will go through the property, test all the cooking facilities. They'll test all electrical. They'll run, they'll run the water, test water pressure. I mean, hours and hours. I've seen some of these take 4 to 6 hours, depending on how big the home is. I think one of them we had 4 inspectors. You don't always have to have the roof inspected. The initial inspection by the home inspector can be a drone, and he'll get a good top-down view. You as a buyer, you have the right to have a roof inspection. You can have radon. You can have mold detection. You can have asbestos. You can test for asbestos. You have the right to do all those things. You have geological. I mean, I've had people that have had foundations inspected. I recommended people cancel escrows because the home inspection report just wasn't. It just didn't make sense to move forward with the purchase, and that's what a good real estate agent does. All those things, and also at times advises the client to cancel the purchase, and it's the right thing to do. And the right thing to do is always the right thing to do. I'm a firm believer in that. God's in the details, but if it's right, it's right. And economically, real estate agents are on commission, and it could be a big hit. But more importantly, it could save the client a lot of money. Again, if the foundation, if there's a foundation issue, it could be 100, 200, 300,000 or more. Plumbing, we recently had a client, they were getting ready to pull the trigger on a home. We saw a prior inspection report, and there were a lot of things that were of big concern. The quality of the work done on the fix and flip. There was some corrosion in the pipes. There was the junction box, it was going to take too much after the purchase. So it wasn't just the purchase. Now the buyer or the seller was saying, hey, we know the work was shoddy. We know this and this, but we still want you to pay full price. That didn't make sense. So we advised our client to not continue. If they had accepted that report, then certainly they would have bought the home or would have opened escrow. But our opinion, and we're not inspectors, we're not appraisers, we're not electricians, plumbers, and all that. We're not doctors, lawyers. Though I did stay at a Holiday Inn Express one night. But we look at all this and we advise our clients accordingly, whatever is in their best interests. And coming back to dual representation, I think it's difficult to represent both the buyer and seller at the same time and to do it well. There are some agents that make it a practice to represent both. I know some people in an area that had over 90%. They list a home, they represent the buyer 90% of the time. I just mathematically, it's just not possible. It's just not. I mean, it's 50,000 agents. You can't be the only one that has a buyer for that. But we know some that they'll throughout their career it's 30% plus, and it's an interesting. In some states, you can't represent both buyer and seller. In California, you can. There is no fiduciary responsibility legally. And this is what's interesting. And as a stockbroker, we had a fiduciary responsibility to our client. We were expected to do what was best in the interest of the client. And so you have a lot of additional disclosures when you trade in options or currencies or things like that. Some things are not age appropriate. Things are not investment experience appropriate. You wouldn't want to get them into what's called, naked options, because you could have unlimited exposure. I mean, you could literally lose millions, depending on how many contracts you bought or sold, depending if you're going long or short. You want to make certain that the investor knew what they were doing. On the real estate side, it's not always that case. And I wish that there was fiduciary responsibility, because I think it's a big deal. For sake of argument, let's say that the commission is 2.5% to us as representing a buyer or seller. Say total is 5%. So the $1 million property is $25,000 commission, and we split that. We split that with the broker, and at the end of the day, we don't get it all. That's just not the way that works. There's a lot of fees in real estate, which is why a lot of people they kind of flunk out of real estate, if you will. They just can't survive. A lot of fees. But for sake of argument, let's say it's $25,000. So the difference in $1 million to $1.5 million is $5,000. So at 2.5%, that's $125. So it's not a lot of money to the agent. But here's the truth. To that buyer or that seller at $5,000 could mean a lot. It could be an extra $30, $40 a month. It could mean the difference between upgrading a bathroom and not upgrading a bathroom. Such a big deal. And we really, really take that seriously. And that's one of the things I like to impart to people is I'm very mindful that it's your money. And I'm not saying not all agents think of that. But let me come back to fiduciary responsibility. I'd love for the real estate industry to have true level of fiduciary responsibility. We're seeing lawsuits where some agents represented they had their clients go in naked in a sense, no contingencies, no appraisal, no inspection, no loan contingency, no HOA, no termite. They waived everything. A sophisticated investor can do that, sophisticated buyer. I'm not saying that you're not sophisticated, but everyone's not sophisticated. That I know. Because not everybody's bought 8, 10, 12 homes. And sophisticated, there's multiple levels. But it's important, and I've always believed it's important to represent the client properly. I've never recommended people go in with no contingencies, just never have. Even on the commercial side, it's nice to be able to walk away from something should it not check out on the discovery side, in the inspections and all disclosures. So that's tonight's show. 27 minutes. I appreciate you joining me. And certainly, whether you're looking to buy, sell, you're looking to invest, residential, commercial, you're looking to make an investment in real estate over the next 5 days, 50 days, or further out, I'd love to talk to you. Reach out to us, email us, text us, call us, set up a Zoom call. We'd love to help you make a smooth move to or from Southern California. So Orange County, LA County, San Diego County, Riverside County, San Bernardino County. I've lived in Ventura County. So reach out to us. If we don't have that level of expertise in that exact area or that exact project, we partner with a lot of people. We'd love to talk to you about what your plans are for the balance of 2023. Thanks for joining us. Bruce Clark, Coldwell Banker.